Hi all. This video is about the issue of how much time it actually takes to manage properties and whether it's full-time or part-time. There's a lot of stuff on the internet that tells you property can be passive and people like to build it to make a passive income. This is true to an extent. There is almost always some degree of work required, whether you have one or two properties or a larger number, and it depends how you set things up. At the moment I have 18 rental properties and this takes very little of my time because the majority of them are managed. I have about 5 properties that I still manage myself, and this is because they are little to no effort to manage. As previously mentioned, if they become effort or if the tenants become troublesome, then I pass this to an agency that I trust and they take over and it becomes less of a headache. Earlier on in my property journey I obviously had fewer properties and I was self-managing them all. To start with, I was having to self-manage properties where the tenants were not entirely reliable and they ran off stealing furniture, they ran off owing a lot of money and they just disappeared and they were not wholesome and caused trouble in all kinds of ways. The majority of the tenants at the time didn't cause this level of trouble, but there certainly were ones that did. As I had a day job at the time, my parents took it upon themselves to find tenants for me, and they just made contacts with local agents. And as we didn't know things about agents having to be ALA registered or which agents were trustworthy and which ones weren't, we would often end up with tenants that were substandard and not trustworthy. I was also self-managing the properties at the time. The time money concept I had not learnt at the time. I was more of the mentality that money should be saved. But this ended up with me having to make arrangements to fix issues in properties, redecorate properties and things like that. And then obviously once things like furniture were stolen, we'd have to replace the furniture and get new tenants in. In each property I also had a shed built to house the lawnmower to cut the grass. I later learned that this was not necessary. So basically, before having advanced knowledge of property management or property investment, I was doing things like this, and this led to more time being taken. I then went through a couple of more agencies and finally discovered an agent who at least supplied me with tenants that were trustworthy in terms of paying rent. I later learned that these tenants were sourced well, and a good agency will conduct a number of tests on the tenants and do their research. So it then got to the point a few years ago where I had about 10 rental properties and I was self-managing all of them. The properties were all in Coventry at the time and I was working in London. I had a flat in Milton Keynes as well, and these were all being self-managed. And during my break times or lunch times I was able to take queries as and when required. I could reply on WhatsApp or by email anyway. And although it was a bit of work, it was basically common sense and logic and fulfilling tenant requirements, and by then I had made some decent contacts in terms of contractors. Mostly the kind of contractors you need are electricians, gas engineers and people who can fix things. So I would receive inquiries from tenants or requests and I would just WhatsApp or email the relevant contractor and it would be done. At that time also there was quite a big student market in Coventry. So most of my tenants were students. Although this tenant type is considered to be more demanding and more work, overall I was able to cope with the workload and the requests just by organising things efficiently. I was very lucky from the point of view that by the time I was running my properties in this way, technology had sufficiently advanced to the stage where, as mentioned, WhatsApp and emails were commonplace. So we could text photos, videos as required to get things done quickly. If this technology was not around, it would have been a little bit more troublesome, but still very doable within reasonable time frames. So to reiterate, at the time when I had about 10 properties, I was self-managing and doing a full-time job in another city, and I personally did not find it too stressful. If you develop the mentality wherein you just like getting things done and you have relatively good contacts to help you do this, then it can be a relatively easy job. I then began to study a bit more about wealth and understood the time money concept, wherein it's better to save your time and spend a little bit of money on people who really know what they're doing. So if an agency is going to charge 10% to manage tenants and the agency is reliable and trustworthy, then this is always a good option. My first mentor taught me this as well. As it is their expertise, it's better to pay them a small cut of the profits so that they can conduct their business and make your life easier in return. You can therefore spend more time on either your day job or finding new opportunities, rather than spend your time on dealing with troublesome tenants. In the years since, I developed contacts with a particularly good agency, and it's also in their interest to help me because if they buy properties for me and manage properties for me, this increases their business, their earnings, and it increases the amount of money I earn as well and helps me manage my investments effectively. The agent obviously wants to grow and they need me to grow, and I need the agent to help manage my properties efficiently, so it's a win-win for everyone. So I'm at the stage now where most days I don't hear about issues from my 18 properties, but as some of my tenants are social housing tenants, then these can sometimes require a little bit more work. But work as in replying to an email or two here and there, which I'm sure most people could manage. So investing in BTL properties and having them tenanted and earning a living from them can be as passive as you like. I've heard there are other incidences where if costs are below £500 for a certain amount of damage that tenants may have caused, the landlord can automatically instruct the estate agent to carry out repairs without informing the landlord. I have not personally gone down this route yet, but consider it an option for the future, which would free up even more of my time to look for new opportunities or focus on things that interest me more. Some people do enjoy managing tenants. I do know of someone who has a number of HMOs and he vets the tenants individually. He does credit checks on them, all kinds of checks, meets them, places them in the property and listens to all their concerns and addresses them in a timely manner, and he personally enjoys doing it. It's all up to you and what you prefer to focus on. Some people prefer self-managing, others don't. So overall it is a personal choice, and that's one of the great things about property. It's, as everyone's an individual, we all have our likes and dislikes and can run our business in any way we see fit. So property as a passive investment is for the most part possible. Thanks for listening. See you again next time.